A wooden staff cracked across a boy's back. He hit the stone floor face first. His hands shook, but he didn't cry. Crying meant another hit. He pushed himself up, blood on his lip, and took the stance again. The man standing over him wasn't a stranger. This was his teacher. And this was a normal Tuesday. He did this 5 hours a day. Every single day. No breaks. No days off. If he stopped, he got hit. If he slowed down, he got hit. If he cried, he got hit harder. The boy was 7 years old. His name was Jackie Chan. The training that would make him the most famous action star alive didn't start in a gym. It started in a place most people would call abuse. What was he hiding about the years that built him? This is that story. Stay with me on this one. In 1961, a man named Charles Chan walked his 7-year-old son up a hill in Hong Kong to a place called the China Drama Academy. It was a boarding school for Peking opera. Sounds fancy. It wasn't. It was a compound. Cement floors, thin mats, wooden training dummies bolted to the walls. And a man named Master Yu Jim Yuan ran it like a military camp. Charles Chan couldn't afford to raise his boy. That's the plain truth. He worked as a cook at the French embassy, and the money wasn't enough. He and his wife were about to move to Australia for better work, and taking their son wasn't an option. So when someone told him about the academy, about a place that would house and feed and train his son, he made a decision that would shape everything. He signed a contract. 10 years. His boy would live at the academy for a full decade. No visits unless the master approved it. No phone calls. No holidays. The boy would train, perform, eat, and sleep under Master Yu's total authority. If the boy got hurt during training, that was the master's business, not the father's. And just like that, a 7-year-old became someone else's property. Now here's the thing. Jackie Chan was not a tough kid. He wasn't the strongest or the fastest. He cried a lot. He was homesick from the first night. He didn't understand why his parents left him in this place. And the other kids, most of them older, saw that weakness immediately. But the academy didn't care about feelings. It ran on a schedule that would break most adults. Wake up at 5 in the morning. Stretch. Not the kind of stretching you do before a jog. This was forced flexibility. 2 older students would push your legs apart until your hips touched the ground, whether your body was ready for it or not. Kids screamed. Some pulled muscles. Some tore ligaments. It didn't matter. If you couldn't do the splits cleanly by the end of the first month, you got extra sessions. Extra sessions meant extra pain. After stretching came the forms. Kung Fu forms. Acrobatic sequences. Tumbling. Handstands. The students did these for hours. If the form wasn't right, the master corrected them. And correction meant a hit. A cane. A staff. An open palm across the face. Not once in a while. Every single time. The standard was perfection. Anything less was punished on the spot. Breakfast was rice. Sometimes vegetables. Never enough. Lunch was the same. Dinner was the same. The students were always hungry. Always sore. Always tired. And there was no one to complain to, because the master was the law. There was no office to report to. No parent arriving at the end of the day. Just the walls, the floor, and the schedule. Jackie would later say that during those first months, he cried himself to sleep every night. He hid under his thin blanket and muffled the sound, because crying out loud meant punishment. One of the older students told him to bite his own arm if he needed to cry. That way, the pain would stop the sobbing. He did that for weeks. His forearm was covered in teeth marks. Nobody asked about them. But something happened inside that misery. Jackie started watching. He noticed which students got hit the least. They were the ones who moved the fastest, who hit their marks without hesitation, who could flip and land and hold the position without wobbling. Speed and precision kept you safe. So he started training harder. Not because he loved it, because he wanted to stop getting hit. By the time he was 9, Jackie Chan was one of the best students at the academy. His flexibility was extreme. His acrobatic skill was sharp. He could take a fall from any height and roll out of it clean. And he could take a beating without making a sound. That last part wasn't a skill they taught on purpose. It was just what the place did to you. Master Yu picked his best students for a performance group called the Seven Little Fortunes. Jackie made the cut. So did a boy named Sammo Hung, who was older and bigger and hit harder than anyone else at the school. And another named Yuan Biao, who was lighter and faster and could do things in the air that didn't seem possible. These three would become the most important stunt performers in film history. But back then, they were just kids trying to survive the day. The Seven Little Fortunes performed at theaters, at festivals, at private events. They did flips, martial arts, acrobatics. And every penny they earned went to Master Yu. The students saw none of it. They performed because they were told to. And they went back to the academy and trained some more. That was the system. Train. Perform. Hand over the money. Sleep. Wake up. Do it again. When Jackie was about 11, something happened that changed the academy forever. One of the students ran away. His name doesn't show up in any official record. Jackie mentioned him once in an interview and never brought it up again. The boy had been at the academy for 4 years. He was good. Strong legs, clean tumbling, sharp hands. But one night, after a beating that went longer than usual, he climbed the wall and disappeared into the city. Master Yu didn't call the police. He didn't file a report. He gathered every student in the courtyard the next morning. It was still dark out. The air was cold. The students stood in rows, barefoot on stone, and waited. Master Yu stood in front of them and said one sentence. "If any of you leave, I will find you. And what I do when I find you will make today's lesson look gentle." Then the training began. That day's session was the worst any of them had experienced. Double the hours. Double the punishment for every mistake. The entire group paid for one boy's escape. It went on for 3 days. Jackie later said that was the day he stopped thinking of the academy as a school. It was something else entirely. Place you survived. You didn't graduate from it. You outlasted it. And for the rest of his time there, he never once considered running. Not because he didn't want to, because he'd seen what happened to everyone when one person tried. The training methods got harder as the boys got older. By 12, Jackie was doing full contact sparring with students 3 and 4 years older. Not controlled drills. Real hits. Real speed. Broken noses were common. Cracked ribs happened at least once a month. One student fractured his collarbone during a tumbling exercise and was made to continue training the next day with his arm strapped to his side. There was no medical staff. There were no x-rays. No ice packs. No bandages beyond torn strips of cloth. If you could stand, you trained. Believe me, this wasn't about building character. This was about building a product. Master Yu made his money from performances. Injured students who couldn't perform were a problem. So the calculus was brutal and simple. If the injury didn't stop you from moving, you trained. If it did stop you, you were useless. You got less food. You got the worst sleeping spot. You became invisible. And invisible meant vulnerable because the other kids noticed when the master stopped watching someone. Jackie broke his nose for the first time at 12. He broke it again at 13. Both times, an older student simply grabbed the bridge of his nose and reset it by hand. No painkiller. No ice. He went back to training within the hour. The second time, he said the crack was so loud the student next to him flinched. But here's what nobody talks about. The training wasn't just physical. Master Yu used psychological pressure that would make a military interrogator raise an eyebrow. He played students against each other. He picked favorites and rotated them so no one ever felt safe. He praised you one day and humiliated you the next in front of everyone. He'd single you out for a compliment at breakfast and then beat you for the same technique at lunch. You never knew where you stood. And that uncertainty, that constant not knowing whether you were safe or in danger, Jackie later described it as the thing that shaped him more than any punch or kick ever did. He learned to read a room before he entered it. He learned to sense someone's mood from the way they breathed. He learned to perform not just acrobatics but emotions, instant adjustments to whatever the moment demanded. Because at the academy, the ability to read the master's mood was a survival skill. Get it wrong and you got hit. Get it right and you might get an extra portion of rice. And that skill, that ability to sense an audience, to feel the energy of a room, to adjust in real time, that's what made Jackie Chan a star decades later. It didn't come from talent. It came from fear. By the time Jackie was 15, he was doing things most trained adults couldn't do. Backflips from standing. Falls from 10 feet onto bare ground with no padding. Full acrobatic sequences while singing opera in pitch. He could fight, flip, land, roll, and get back up in a single continuous motion. His body was a machine built over 8 years of relentless, often violent conditioning. And then something happened that changed everything. The Peking opera tradition was dying. Audiences weren't coming to live performances anymore. Television was replacing theater across Hong Kong. Master Yu's income dried up. The performances slowed down and then nearly stopped. The academy started losing students not because they ran away, but because their families stopped paying the fees. The whole system was collapsing. Jackie's contract was coming to an end. In 1971, at 17 years old, he walked out of the China Drama Academy for the last time. He had no money, no formal education, no family connections. He couldn't read well. He couldn't write well. He had a body that could do extraordinary things and a mind that had been trained to endure anything. But he had no idea what to do next. And then a door opened. A friend from the academy, Sammo Hung, had found work in the film industry. Hong Kong's movie studios needed people who could do the things Jackie could do. Fighting, falling, tumbling, getting thrown through furniture. They were called stuntmen. The pay was low. The hours were brutal. But it was work. Jackie took the job. For a brief moment, it felt like the worst was over. He was out, free, working, earning his own money for the first time in his life. He bought his first real meal with his own earnings. He slept in a bed with an actual mattress. He walked the streets of Hong Kong at his own pace and nobody hit him for walking too slowly. He thought he'd survived the hardest part of his life. He sat down on a bench outside his rented room, looked up at the sky, and let himself breathe. He was wrong. The first day on a real film set, a director told Jackie to jump off a second-floor balcony onto a car roof. No wire, no pad, no rehearsal, just jump. Jackie looked down. The car was maybe 15 feet below. He jumped from higher at the academy. But at the academy, the floor was flat and predictable. This was a metal car roof that could buckle, shift, or break his ankles on impact. He asked about safety precautions. The director laughed. The crew laughed. Someone said, "If you don't want to jump, there are 50 guys waiting outside who will. This is where it turns." See, Jackie thought he'd left the brutal part behind. He thought film work was a step up from the academy. It was worse. At the academy, the training was hard, but it was controlled in its own twisted way. Master Yu knew exactly how far to push a body before it broke. The film industry didn't know and didn't care. There was no master watching. There was just a schedule and a budget. In 1970s Hong Kong cinema, stunt performers were disposable. There were no safety regulations, no insurance policies, no union protections, no one checking whether a stunt was survivable before calling action. If you got hurt on set, you were replaced by lunch. If you got hurt badly enough to need a hospital, you paid for it yourself. And if you refused a single stunt, you were blacklisted. Word traveled fast in that industry. One refusal and your phone stopped ringing. Jackie jumped off the balcony. He landed hard. His ankles screamed. But he stood up. And the director said, "Again." The angle wasn't right. He did it 4 more times. By the 5th jump, he couldn't feel his feet. He limped off set that evening and soaked his legs in a basin of cold water in his rented room. His ankles swelled up to twice their normal size. He was back on set at 6 the next morning. Now here's the part that matters. Jackie didn't just accept this system. He thrived in it. The academy had trained him for exactly this kind of world. Pain tolerance, instant obedience to authority, the ability to take a hit, get up, and do it again without asking questions or showing hesitation. Every terrible thing Master Yu had put him through made him the perfect stunt performer. The abuse became his competitive advantage. He was better at suffering than anyone else on set. And that realization, that connection between the abuse and the success, that's what Jackie Chan has never wanted to talk about openly. Because it means the system worked. The beatings, the starvation, the psychological manipulation, the isolation from his family. It produced exactly the result it was designed to produce. Person who doesn't stop. And acknowledging that truth means asking a question with no comfortable answer. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. Because what comes next is where this story goes from difficult to dangerous. Within 2 years, Jackie wasn't just a stuntman. He was the stuntman. Directors started writing scenes specifically around what his body could do. Not what a character could do, what Jackie could do. He was doing 3-4 films a year, each one pushing the stunts further. Higher falls, faster fights, longer takes with no cuts, because cutting away from the action meant admitting the performer couldn't sustain the sequence. By 1978, Jackie was directing his own films. And this is where the training secrets became something darker. Because now he wasn't just risking his own body. He was asking others to risk theirs. And the standard he set was the standard he'd learned at the academy. No pads, no wires, no nets, no shortcuts. If you're in my film, you do it for real. Period. His stunt team trained the way academy students trained. 6 days a week. Full contact rehearsals. Falls from real heights onto real surfaces. Jackie designed action sequences that required 10, 15, 20 takes to perfect. Not because the first take was bad. Because he wanted a better angle. Cleaner landing. A more impressive impact on screen. And every additional take was another chance for someone to shatter a bone or tear a joint. His team members broke ankles, wrists, ribs, spines. One stuntman fractured his skull during a motorcycle chase sequence and was back on set within a month. Not because he wanted to be, because the culture Jackie had built, the culture master you had built inside him, treated injury as weakness and weakness as unacceptable. You performed through the pain. Or you left the team. The injury list grew every year. Jackie himself was accumulating damage at a rate that would have ended most athletic careers 3 times over. He broke his nose again. He cracked his cheekbone. He dislocated his pelvis during a fall. He dislocated his shoulder so many times that the joint became permanently loose and would slip out of socket if he raised his arm too fast. Doctors told him to rest. He didn't know how. Rest wasn't a concept the academy had included in the curriculum. He kept going. Every film had to be bigger than the last. Every stunt had to top what came before. The audience expected it. His reputation demanded it. And the only method he knew for delivering was the one he'd been taught since he was 7 years old. Push harder. Endure more. Never show weakness. Never stop. Never let anyone see you hesitate. And nobody around him had the authority or the willingness to say stop. Because nobody had ever said stop to Jackie Chan. Not once in his entire life. In 1985, Jackie Chan stood on top of a clock tower on a set built specifically for a film called Project A. The fall was about 60 feet. Below him was a cloth awning stretched across a narrow alley. Below that was a second awning. Below that was the ground. The stunt was simple on paper. Fall from the clock tower. Hit the first awning. Crash through it. Hit the second awning. Crash through that. Hit the ground. Get up. Walk away. No wire. No mattress below camera. No hidden pad. Just Jackie, the awnings, and gravity. His stunt coordinator told him the awnings might not slow the fall enough. Jackie nodded. He climbed the tower anyway. He stood at the top, looked down, and jumped. He did it. The first take looked good. The awnings tore. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and stood up. But Jackie walked to the playback monitor, watched the footage, and shook his head. The camera angle wasn't dramatic enough. So he climbed back up the tower, stood on the edge, and let himself drop again. 60 feet. The awnings tore again. He hit the ground even harder this time. Something cracked in his neck. He stood up slowly, walked to the monitor, watched the footage, nodded. They used the second take. That fall became one of the most famous stunts in film history, and it nearly killed him. The impact compressed a vertebra in his neck. For weeks afterward, he had trouble turning his head to the left. A doctor told him he was one bad landing away from permanent paralysis. Jackie didn't tell anyone on set. He finished the production on schedule. But Project A was just the beginning. A year later, during the filming of Police Story, Jackie did something even more dangerous. He slid down a pole strung with real electrical lights from the top of a shopping mall set to the ground floor. That's about 75 feet of free sliding with nothing to slow him down. The lights were real. The electrical current running through them was real. The burns on his hands were real. Second degree. He hit the ground so hard the impact fractured 2 vertebrae in his lower back and drove him several inches into the plywood below the set. He got up. He finished the scene. The crew stared at him. Some of them looked away. The next day he could barely walk. His back had seized completely. But he came to set. He shot dialogue scenes standing in one position because bending or sitting down sent a bolt of pain through his spine that made his vision go white. Now listen. This is the part most people don't understand about Jackie Chan's training secrets. It wasn't about learning how to kick or how to flip. Any dedicated athlete can learn techniques with enough time and good coaching. What the academy trained into him, what those years of being hit and starved and controlled hammered deep into his nervous system, was the ability to override his own survival instincts. A normal person, standing on top of a 60-foot tower with nothing but cloth between them and concrete, has a voice inside that says don't jump. That voice is your body protecting itself. It's the healthiest reflex a human being has. Jackie Chan had that voice beaten out of him. Not through bravery. Not through mental toughness. Through conditioning. Years and years of being punished for hesitation until hesitation itself was erased. The academy didn't teach him courage. It taught him that hesitation leads to pain. So he didn't hesitate. Ever. About anything. That's the secret. That's the training method he never wanted people to see clearly. Because it isn't something you can admire or replicate in a YouTube tutorial. It's not discipline. It's not willpower. It's not a warrior spirit. It's damage. Functional damage. Profitable damage. But damage all the same. Over the course of his career, Jackie Chan broke nearly every bone in his body. His skull. His nose more times than he can accurately count. His cheekbone. Both ankles. His breastbone. Most of his fingers, some of them multiple times. His pelvis. 3 vertebrae. He dislocated his shoulder so many times surgeons eventually told him there was nothing left to repair. He tore his ACL and continued filming for 2 weeks before seeing a doctor. During the filming of Armor of God in 1986, Jackie jumped from a castle wall to a tree branch. The branch broke under his weight. He fell headfirst onto rocks below. His skull cracked open. A piece of bone pushed into his brain. Blood poured from his ear. He was rushed to emergency surgery. Doctors removed a bone fragment from inside his skull and replaced the gap with a plastic plug. He has a permanent hole in the side of his head covered by that plug. If you know where to look, you can see the indent. He almost died on that set. Production insurance didn't cover the injury because the stunt hadn't been approved by any safety coordinator. There was no safety coordinator. The production shut down for months while he recovered in a hospital bed, unable to stand without help. When Jackie was finally cleared by doctors, he went back and finished the film. He did the tree stunt again. A different tree, a stronger branch, a different angle, same height, same risk, same man. Why? Because the only programming the academy had installed in him still ran his life. You don't stop. Pain is not a reason to stop. Fear is not a reason. A cracked skull is not a reason. You get up. You do it again. You do it until someone says it's good enough. And then you do it one more time. Jackie Chan is in his 70s now. He moves slower than he used to. His right ear is partly deaf from a blow he took during a fight scene in the mid-80s. His fingers are crooked, bent at odd angles from breaks that healed without proper setting. His shoulders sit uneven because of all the dislocations over the decades. When he walks for more than 20 minutes, his back locks up and he has to stop and stretch on the spot before he can keep going. He still works. He still makes films. But the stunts are smaller now. Camera tricks, wire rigs, carefully placed body doubles for the hardest hits. The things he refused to use for 40 years. He'll tell you in interviews that he's grateful for his career, that the academy made him who he is, that Master Yu was tough but fair, that the pain was worth it. And some of that is true, but not all of it. In quieter moments, in interviews that went longer than the publicist planned, Jackie has said things that crack the polished surface. He once told a reporter that he can't sleep without the television on because silence reminds him of the academy at night, when the only sound was someone else trying not to cry. He said the sound of a wooden stick hitting a hard surface makes his hands clench, just for a second, before he catches himself. He said he missed his mother every single day for 10 years and didn't know how to tell anyone because there was nobody at the academy who cared enough to listen. These aren't the things that make it into the highlight reels. They don't play over slow-motion footage of a man crashing through glass or sliding down a building. But they're the truest part of the entire story. The China Drama Academy closed its doors in the late 1970s when the last paying students left. Master Yu Jim Yuen eventually moved to Los Angeles, where he lived out his remaining years in relative obscurity. The man who had shaped some of the greatest performers in Asian cinema history spent his final decade largely forgotten by the industry he had fed talent into. When he died in 1997, only a handful of his former students attended the funeral. Jackie was one of them. He stood at the grave, and by some accounts he didn't say much. He stayed for the full service and left quietly. What do you say to the man who broke you into the exact shape the world wanted? There isn't a greeting card for that. That's not a training secret you teach. That's a wound so deep it looks like a personality. Here's the thing about Jackie Chan's training secrets. They weren't secrets because they were proprietary techniques passed down through generations of martial arts wisdom. They were secrets because they were ugly. Beatings, starvation, isolation from family, psychological control and manipulation. A system deliberately designed to remove a child's ability to say no, to resist, to protect himself. That's not a martial arts philosophy. That's not an ancient path to mastery. It's something much harder to categorize and much harder to talk about honestly. And the hardest part of the story isn't the abuse itself. It's what the abuse produced. Because it produced Jackie Chan. It produced a performer who changed the entire language of action cinema, who made hundreds of millions of people around the world laugh and gasp and hold their breath, who did things on screen that no human being had ever done before and that no one has matched since. The results were extraordinary. The method was brutal. And those two facts exist side by side. Neither one cancels the other out. Neither one makes the other okay. Jackie has said publicly more than once that he would never train anyone the way he was trained. He has said this clearly and without hesitation. But he's also said, in almost the same breath, that without that training he wouldn't exist. Not Jackie Chan the movie star. Jackie Chan the person. The reflexes, the timing, the pain tolerance, the ferocious work ethic, the ability to walk into any room on earth and know exactly what the audience needs before they know it themselves. All of it came from that compound on the hill in Hong Kong. Every bit of it. So when people ask about his training secrets, the real answer isn't a workout routine. It isn't a diet plan. It isn't a list of exercises you can pin to your wall. The real answer is a 7-year-old boy standing on a cold cement floor at 5 in the morning with welts across his back, doing the same form again and again and again until the man with the stick stopped hitting him. That's the secret. That's what built the legend. And Jackie knows it. He's always known it. That's exactly why he never wanted you to see it. Some stories don't wrap up clean. This is one of them. Jackie Chan gave the world something incredible. Something joyful and thrilling and unlike anything else in the history of entertainment. And the world never fully understood what it cost him to build it. Now you do. Whether that changes how you watch his films is up to you. But the next time you see him leap from a rooftop, or tumble down a hillside, or take a hit that looks like it should have ended everything, remember the boy on the stone floor. The one who wasn't allowed to cry. The one who bit his own arm to keep quiet in the dark. That boy is still in there, somewhere behind the smile. He's been in there the whole time.